to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm Dr. Greer, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Fusion Network for hosting us here every couple of weeks to bring you up to date on what we're doing at cseti.org and disclosureproject.org and the orionproject.org. And we're here today to talk about some exciting developments with Sirius.neverendinglight.com, the film that we're working on to end the secrecy on this subject. And also we'll be talking with Marilyn and Diane, who are from a contact team that CSETI has in the New York area, outside Albany, New York, and their experiences in putting together this contact team and the amazing experiences they've had over the last couple of years since working on this together. And I think people will be really interested to hear what an interested party can do once they learn how to make these protocols that we have developed for ET contact work in a team setting, in a group setting, and the sort of experiences that are open to anyone who wants to try to do it. And along those lines, I just want people to know that we have sort of a great announcement today. We just got up on the play.google.com site where you get your Android apps, the CSETI protocols for making contact, and it's called the ET Contact Tool if you're looking at play.google.com. For a while we've had it on the iTunes store at Apple for iPhones, but we did not have it in an Android form, but we have just beta tested it, and it's available now, I am told, as of this morning. So those of you who have Android phones, smartphones, let me just tell you that what this app has, it actually has the meditation protocols for making contact. It has the entire process of what these protocols entail, how to do the meditation and the remote viewing training. It has the tones that we had recorded from the crop circles that we send out into space, and it'll actually, you can play them off of your phone, and your phone can be hooked to a speaker if you want. So everything but a laser in your consciousness will be on this app, and it actually goes through a lot of how to develop these contact teams like Marilyn and Diane have done, and what you need to have in terms of equipment. So it's really a complete package, and it's available now at play.google.com for those of you who have Android smartphones. Of course, it's been available for a time now at the iPhone store, and it's called the ET Contact Tool if you're going to that site looking up how to find it. So those of you who want to get that and have been asking about it, it's now available. So that's really good news. So without further ado, I'd like to thank and welcome Marilyn and Diane for being with us today. Hello, folks.
Hello. Hello. Glad to be here.
Yes, well, why don't you share with people a little bit about how you guys got involved and the kind of experiences you've been having in New York with this amazing team. It's one of the strongest CSETI.org contact teams in the world, and I think it's just really a great story to share with people.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It is a great story, and this is Marilyn talking. And, well, we went to several expeditions with you and your team, and as a result, we came home and said we have to continue this work. And we began with a really small group, and over the last year, the group has grown, and what I'd like to talk about for a minute is just the nature of this group. We have all kinds, the range of people in this group, Stephen, and the age range. We have from like 20 to like 70.
Awesome.
And then we have attorneys and teachers and ministers and sanitation workers from New York City and firemen and police, women and just a genetic researcher. I mean, people with all walks of life and all ages, and they've come here with such a commitment. Some people drive 4 hours to get here for one evening's work, and it's just amazing the commitment of this group. And we've noticed that as the commitment from all of these people, and we grow every time there are new people. We had somebody fly up from Virginia Beach for the one in June, and people feel the cohesiveness that has developed over time, and that cohesiveness has markedly changed the kind of contact we're having. And so anybody who wants to start a group and can get members to come on a regular basis, I mean, the the consciousness changes in this group, and we are doing such heart contact at this point with our ET friends, and every single night, there's a very small group that goes out almost every night on this property. There is contact every single night. And then on the monthly meetings, we're having amazing things, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the other thing we've noticed is having this group on the same land. We live way out in the woods,
right,
and in the country, and so we have very little activity in the skies that get in the way, except when lately the military helicopters have been hovering. But we doing it on the same land, it's almost like even the land has created a cohesiveness to the earth consciousness that we're doing this contact on. And so it feels like there's just the ETs know we're here, they know our commitments, they understand our kind of consciousness levels that continue to increase. And as a result of the last couple of months, I'll just go into some of the things that have been happening. Each night, each monthly meeting, we've probably seen at least 25 crafts.
Right.
Distinguished from satellites, because we have the satellite chart, and we're all beginning to feel the difference. But these crafts, the power-ups that happened last, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago with the global CSETI, we had power-ups that were responding both to our thoughts and to the laser, and they powered up so strong and then disappeared and powered up again and to our questions. And then we had flash bulbs that were just extraordinary come in. And this stuff now just seems like normal material. Our tri-field meters, sometimes when this extra activity is coming in, are just registering such high magnetic energy. The radar detector, when we first got together the last time, gave us the 3 beats, I am here, right when we convened and started the group. And again, we live out in the country. There's nothing that I often have the radar detector on at different times when we're not doing contact work, and it just doesn't go off. It's just
right. In the way of explanation, before you go much further, because I think we're going to lose a lot of people who don't know what the protocols are and the kind of equipment we have. One of the protocols we use, of course, is in group consciousness and meditation, where we then do a remote viewing process where people are trained to see with their inner sight, and this, of course, all the World Puja people understand this aspect of non-local consciousness, to see where the extraterrestrial vehicles are, even go visit to their planets or their spacecraft, and then we turn it around into a vector where we actually zoom in from wherever we sense they are into where we're located. So if you're in some land outside Albany, New York, and in a wilderness area, then you show them that part of the United States, and then you show them exactly that area and the farm and your group, and zoom right in like you're zooming in from outer space. Or if you sense that the ET vehicles are under the water out in the Atlantic Ocean, or if you feel that they're in the Earth somewhere, you connect to them there and guide them from that location. So wherever you sense them and see them in your inner sight, then you guide them in. Then what starts happening is what Marilyn was talking about. We'll have these brilliant bursts of light that occur in the sky that we call light bulbs. And it's like a flash bulb where you have this, if someone were in the sky and set off a flash bulb, but there's nothing there. And you can see with night scope binoculars, there's no aircraft, there's no plane, there's no, like, what have you, or an object will come over and get very bright and send a light towards us. And we always have satellite charts to rule out that it could be a satellite or a iridium satellite that kind of spins and puts out a lot of light. So we do all that, and then the electronics we have on site include, and by the way, these iPhone and Android apps turn your phones into magnetometers also, but we have these what are called tri-field meters that pick up electromagnetic fields of energy, and we usually set it on a magnetic field because the ET vehicles, when they're dematerialized but are coming into your area of space-time, will cause a disturbance in the magnetic field flux. So there's a baseline magnetic field that you can go out into the woods and just set it at 0 so the magnetometer is quiet and at baseline 0. And then if you're out in a remote area where there's no electromagnetic devices such as cars or refrigerators or microwaves or anything like that, suddenly when these phenomena start happening and the ETs start moving in, even if they're not fully materialized, they will start causing the magnetic field flux to be measured on these magnetometers or on your iPhone or Android. And that's a really interesting thing that we've been able to document. And also on the laser and radar detectors, like you use for detecting police radar on a car, we'll have those out there in an area where there's absolutely nothing that would make them go off. And when these objects are approaching, and even if they're not fully materialized in three-dimensional space-time, but that are there in a trans-dimensional energy form that is not fully solid, those detectors will start to go off, and in fact the beings, the ET beings, will utilize their electronic communications interface with their consciousness to go inside the circuitry of the magnetometers and the radar detectors to actually send sort of an encoded message format. And some of these magnetometer recordings that we have are really intelligent. They almost have an emotional quality. You can feel the intent of what they're saying. And then the trick is, of course, is to get very quiet and go into meditation and get a sense of what that sort of electronic signal is conveying in terms of substance and content, which in the last book, there's a whole chapter at the end called the Orion transmissions. One of the first times this happened in a prolonged way, we were in Joshua Tree National Park, and one of our radar detectors began to do this in the middle of this, 800,000 acre wilderness area. And it was just as I had lined up consciousness and this circular crystalline sphere with the Orion sector of space. And at that instant, we had this 23-minute download of very intense energy that was unbelievable. And not only how intense it was that everyone could feel and see, but also the message that came through. And so what I tried to do as it was happening was to speak the feeling and the meaning of the message. And that's in the last chapter of this book, Contact, Countdown the Transformation, that you can get at Amazon.com and other places now. But I just wanted to explain that, because what we really use when we go out into the field, we use really three central modalities for contact. The central operating system, if you want to look at it that way, is consciousness and the science of consciousness, because ET civilizations that go faster than the speed of light, by definition, must utilize technologies that go beyond linear space-time. And when you go beyond the speed of light, you go into other dimensions that are increasingly integrated directly with consciousness and consciousness forms, such as visualized thought, what the mystics used to call the astral realm. And so, but this is being done with technologies and communication systems, as well as with their innate ability, because when you see these ETs with their craft, they're actually touching something and thinking to it, and will navigate the craft to one point in the universe or another. So it's very advanced. It's way beyond these phones that we're talking on right now that are traveling at the speed of light, these phone signals. So that's something that is really important, is to understand the interface between the science of consciousness and our own innate ability to be aware of this aspect of mind that's non-local and omnipresent within us, and how that can be utilized through coherent thought and these meditative techniques to make contact. The second is that we have lasers and things that we send up into the sky. The ones we use go 200 miles into space in clear air, and those give the ETs a precise vector of where we're located, just in case our minds are a little fuzzy and our visualization capabilities are not as clear as they should be. And then we also have these electronic tones that we play, usually on a boom box, but you can play them on your iPhone or Android, that were recorded in the crop circles in England, but we've also have ones that we've had tones that have come into our circle, such as out at Mount Shasta, where we're going in a week or two. And those tones we then send out into space with little walkie-talkies, because we let them know that if they're wanting to get an exact and precise fix of where we're located, they can use the light and the electronic tones to do that. So we use all three of these modalities, and those are the principal modalities. Of course, the heart energy and consciousness is the central one. The message of welcoming them, of seeing them in your inner sight, of seeing that the consciousness within them and the consciousness within each of us is a singularity. It is the one mind of the cosmic being that is within all things. And then the heart space of this sort of the magnetism and the attraction of love and this sort of pure and divine love that we send out along with the thought. So that's the central thing, but we do use these other technologies to get a more precise fix for them. But in addition to that, we have these electronic devices and things that we have that really are important because, you know, often when we have a craft that appears that is fully materialized, within minutes there might be a military jet or a helicopter that comes over. And then, and this happened at Crestone last month, where then the ET craft literally dematerializes. We have this on film, by the way, Marilyn and Diane, from Crestone. You would not believe what happened. This ET craft came in from the northwest, came in, turned, came right over us. We have it on photos and video. And the filmmaker that's working on Sirius.neverendinglight.com with us, Armadi Kalika, saw this, and his assistant. It came in, it literally made like a big circle and dematerialized right in the frame of the film. And it did that just as a military jet that had been circling a little to the north, east, out towards Colorado Springs, where there's an Air Force base, came in very quickly with afterburners on, and the jet turned to try to intercept the ET craft to suppress it from coming into this dimension any further. And that's when this ET craft dematerialized, and we have all of this on videotape. So what's important to understand about that is that this means that we have to be enlightened enough to realize that interstellar civilizations that can dematerialize and go from one point in space to another in these other transdimensional energy forms will do that, and they can literally be, we can be in a field where nothing is in this dimension quite fully materialized, and yet you'll see energy forms, and our electronics will begin to beep, and the magnetometers will begin to do things, and people will be touched, and they'll look over and there'll be nothing there. And it's because the ETs are doing this both for their protection and ours, because frankly we still have a very militarized planet that ET vehicles, when they are fully in this dimension, frequently end up getting chased at and shot at by military systems. And this, of course, we have observed many, many times. And that's one of the reasons why, as ambassadors to the universe, we always invite them in a way that says, please come in any way that is safe and appropriate for this time and place. Because now, if we say that, we need to mean it and understand that an ET craft may be there fully visible and fully materialized, but it also may be literally in the field around us, but in a dimension that is shifted faster than the speed of light or electrons or matter, but that will begin to give us these subtle and not so subtle evidences of their presence, whether it be in consciousness and thought or these electronics or what have you. And that, it begins to be the really nuanced and very exciting part of contact that is much more intimate than most people can even imagine.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, and Stephen, I think one thing that I've really gotten from our group is, as our group understands the truth of inner sight and the truth of working on higher consciousness through our meditations and using your meditations and then silent meditation in the group, and as we connect with the heart path, that, and everybody in the group, there's nobody that has to get caught up to date with that. Everybody understands that we go right into it, and I think the acceleration of ET contact is just enormous.
Right.
With that happening. I mean, I have to say, one night there was a golden ship that came right over our house. It must have been 1,000 feet in the air. It was totally materialized. It was golden with rays of light coming out of it like a star. But it was moving across over the house, 1,000 feet up, slowly, very slowly, and kind of changed its path and then wove in and out. It was just kind of floating. And that golden craft has been here about 3 times.
Wow.
1,000 feet above the house, yeah. And we call it the golden craft of visitation.
What shape? Did you get a sense of the shape of it?
You know, it felt round, but it was hard because there were these golden rays of light kind of coming out of it from all directions. I've never seen anything like it.
Wow.
A huge glowing golden, almost round, a ball of some kind.
Wow,
That's how it
perfect.
looks to the eye.
Yeah,
Diane, did you see that also?
Yes, And we have a small working group that meets just about every night, and those other members too, Jen and Sarah, who you met, they have seen it too, and this has happened where all four of us have seen this huge golden, we call it our golden ship, and it's been amazing.
Well, in fact, one night we were at dinner, and we were talking about this golden craft and the sea study group coming up, and an orb even came into the dining room, this white orb, and it was hovering on the porch. And 2 minutes later, these two military helicopters, this was at night, and we ran out and saw them right over the house, and they were chasing a white light. Right.
That's unfortunately what happens from one end of it. The other end of it, though, is that the ETs are aware of that, and they adjust for it. So long as we can adjust, then we have to keep up. That's what I tell people. We have to keep up with the reality of transdimensional physics and science and the science of consciousness, and then it's easy because these military guys are running around these clunky things, and
it did the same thing. It disappeared right in front of our eyes. At first we thought it was disappearing over the trees, but twice we would see it so clearly, and then it was just totally gone. It just dematerialized in a second.
It's interesting that you described this golden. At Mount Shasta last year, who knows what will happen this year, but we had on multiple occasions this about the same height you're talking about, a few hundred feet to maybe 1,000 feet up, which is fairly close, fully materialized golden. I mean, it's gold object, and it wasn't. But what we saw wasn't quite round. I got the sense that it might have had a little bit of a chevron or angular shape to it, but the light gave off all this light, and even when it would be behind us, it would be bright enough that it would catch my peripheral vision. I'd turn and see it, and people on the other side of our circle would see it also. And it's really distinct because it totally disappears, and it's obvious not an aircraft or anything like that. And it can actually be completely stationary. In fact, a couple of times it just would appear, not move at all, and then disappear in the same spot and having not moved at all. And so one of the things we're going to try to get this year at Mount Shasta is, and Emery Smith is helping us put this together, is a 360 filming, because the night scope cameras we have only get 10% of the sky each.
Right.
We're missing 80. The two cameras get 20%, so we're really only getting, we're missing 80% of the sky. So what we're going to try to do is set up these really high-tech cameras that have a zillion megapixels that can be put in video mode, that are the quality of a still camera, but they'll be running, and it'll get the whole sky the whole night. That's what we're going to try to experiment with this week. Now, we're having to lay out, $10,000 or $15,000 to do that. But I think it's so important to document these things, because frequently these sort of ET craft, when they do fully materialize in our dimension, will be here briefly, and then they'll dematerialize and be around us, but they're beyond what anything can photograph, even if it picks up electronically. So what we're wanting to do is that when they do fully materialize in this dimension, before there's a military chopper or anything sent in, that they're able to be captured on a video or a photograph. So we're trying to improve our ability to do that kind of recording.
That's fantastic. Well, because the last sea study meeting we had weeks ago, there were crafts that seemed to be the same craft that just were going back and forth from the south to the north and the north to the south. And if we had had a camera that night, usually we do, but we didn't that night,
right,
you could really, I think, would be able to tell that it was the same craft. And of course, satellites don't move back and forth. And it was clearly this craft that stayed around, 15 minutes, just going back and forth. It was wonderful.
Wow. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important to talk about for a moment is how key it is for the group to be in that coherence, and that the people are really all on the same page, because what the ETs are looking for with humans are ambassador teams to interface with, so it's not just purely one-on-one and anecdotal, that because it's going from, contact with individuals to contact with these ambassador groups, building up to contact with the entire planet as a planetary. Okay, so we're that stepping stage, and so these citizen diplomacy groups like yours are so important. But for them to function, it is the thing that is most determinative is the intent, the pure-hearted intent of the group, and the coherence of the group to be able to be in this deep meditative state and go into that state of remote view and deep consciousness and also deep heart space. And what that does also is that it creates in the Akashic record of your land, as it were, a sort of a power spot potentiation where your land has now become, as it were, initiated into this process. And even within the structure of space-time, there is this omnipresent consciousness field. And therefore, where you're doing this contact on your land, day after day and week after week, creates a very powerful energy that remains there all the time. And this is why, when people find that if they're doing meditation, if they find a certain place in their house that they do it all the time, it does facilitate the depth of the meditation. Or that if you go to a place that has had some very sacred or enlightened event take place that happened thousands of years ago, you can go there and still feel it. On the other hand, if there's something terrible that's happened, you can feel it. So there is an Akashic record that is actually encoded within the fabric of space-time because consciousness is omnipresent. And all of linear space-time is actually a kind of a crystallization, as it were, of the pure consciousness into the linearity of space-time in the matrix of matter and space and time and what have you, but it's all conscious. And so this consciousness and the feeling that is created during a contact event, and particularly where you keep going back to the same place or on your own land, it really does create that energy that then remains there and then potentiates further contact.
Wow, what a beautiful explanation. Because that's exactly it, Stephen. In fact, I have to bring this up with you. There is we're right on a stream, and there's a huge boulder. It's maybe 6 feet by 8 feet.
Wow.
And many people have started to have visions that there's a portal there. And people have crawled up on this boulder and seen red orbs coming right down the stream. People's hair stands up on their arm. Diane's son had a dream that ships were landing right there by the boulder. And he said it was the most lucid dream he had. So it feels like there's this portal that's open wide up. And before we start in the group, many people want to go to the rock and sit and get grounded before we start because they feel like there's this incredible opening out there.
Wow. Well, and that is true that there can be certain areas where, for whatever electromagnetic reasons, and remember, boulders are crystals. Even normal rocks, they're all crystalline. Look at them under a microscope. All rocks are crystalline, even if it's not pure quartz crystal. And a lot of people don't realize that about the sort of the mineral kingdom. And so if you look at that's very interesting. And the fact that the ET technologies and the transdimensional nature of them do have a sort of resonant factor with crystalline structures. And that may very well be the case. And, of course, the Earth itself, frequently there will be areas where these objects will be seen not quite fully materialized, emerging from the Earth, because if they're in the Earth, and they can be underwater, in the Earth, out in space, they can be in these other dimensions, but there can be a sort of as it will, an attraction or a resonance component because of this crystalline nature of both water and stone. And so that does facilitate things materializing. And it's not that it's required, but it may just be something where it will be more evident because of the subtle energy that is there. And this is a whole area of science that I know that if you look at the work that was done by Marcel Vogel at IBM and dealing with crystals and what have you, it's a really important area of science that I've never actually delved into publicly, but I know a great deal about, and there are people on our team who worked with Marcel Vogel. at IBM, and with all these these amazing properties. Some would call them magical properties of crystalline structures. But it's not just pure quartz crystals or other types of minerals. It's any rock is a crystal. And remember the work of Amato, the Japanese scientist who found that water, crystal structure in water, you can put your consciousness in it, and it actually does get recorded in water. And so water is crystalline, and so is glass. And people don't realize that, of course, glass windows are actually a liquid. That's why very old glass looks like it's running, but it's actually alive and liquid. So all glass, like all the glass in your house, is actually chemically classified as a liquid. A lot of people don't realize that. And so you have these liquid crystal aspects of this that crosses into potentiation of transdimensional energies. And this is also why many of the quote-unquote free energy so-called devices, one of the scientists who was at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, who was almost murdered when he discovered this, who's a very dear friend of mine, a physicist, brilliant physicist, he had barium titanate crystals that when he put an electronic signal in, electricity in at a certain resonant frequency, they would begin to vibrate, and the output wire was 10 times, 100 times more than the input, because the energy was being transduced or transformed from other dimensions through the crystalline structure. And that's what you find a lot of people who understand these ET vehicles, in the very center of them will be these crystalline forms that facilitate these transdimensional shifts in energy where they go from one dimension to another.
Wow.
I'm just trying to connect a few dots for folks.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, it is happening here. Everything you're describing is wonderful, because it really puts it into perspective and what we're all feeling here. And I think why people are willing to come here from such distances, and there is. It feels like an equation that is building exponentially, and everybody can do this.
Oh, that's the thing. That's the key thing is for everyone to understand that, you guys got introduced to this, 3 years ago or whenever, and came to the Outer Banks, but every single person can do this, and it isn't something that requires, you don't have to be like Ingo Swann or someone, you don't have to be. Every person, by virtue of being a human being who's conscious and sentient, can do this and experience it, and it's about intending to want to do it. And if you want to do it and believe you can, you will. And it's the truth.
Well, and it feels like the ETs are just waiting, and it's not them that need to show up, it's us that have to show up. And when we do,
exactly,
the way they want to communicate. I have to share another thing that happened, because I'd love your thoughts on this. And it happened in Arizona through the coyotes. The last time we met, we have owls around here, but they're very distant and they're not that close to the house. And we came out from break, sat down, and there was a chorus of owls, Stephen, that sounded like surround sound. They were in every tree. It felt like all around the group, in the circle, hooting. And the beginning of the hoot sounded familiar to me, but the end of the hoot, where it was so different. I had never heard that sound before. Everybody got chilled. It went on for probably 15 to 20 minutes. These owls, and people were like, some people were familiar with owl behavior, and we just couldn't place what they were doing. And finally we understood, and we went into meditation, and people felt like there were owl beings, and they were communicating tremendous amounts of information through their sound. And then during the meditation, I did a short meditation later, and as I was welcoming the creatures of the planet to our group with love, the owls at that very moment started sounding again, and again it sounded like they were in every tree around the entire group surrounding them. And it was probably one of the most incredible experiences with animals or birds that I've ever had in a sea study group. And it just felt like, as we know, many of these ETs they can come in many, many forms. It felt like they were here as owls, and people saw them in their vision as owl beings.
Right. And many people have had these sort of experiences with the owl-like ETs. And one time at Mount Shasta,
really?
We had 4 of them that were in the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, doing exactly what you're describing a few years ago when we were up in the National Forest at Mount Shasta, California. And by the way, people, just so you know, that we are going to Mount Shasta in a couple weeks, but there's a waiting list for that now, so we don't have any more spaces for that. But we will be doing an expedition in the Anza Borrega Wilderness in Southern California in November. So if you're interested in that, you can look into it at cseti.org, cseti.org. But the main thing is that we've had this happen over and over again with nature and Gaia, the Earth spirit consciousness, interfacing with what we're doing and the ETs doing things that are unbelievable. And it happens in a lot of different ways. And what you described about it sounded like it was in like an echo chamber. We found that frequently when there's a craft that's not quite materialized, but it's all around us, it alters the fabric of space and creates what the audio engineers call an anechoic chamber, which is like a sound chamber. And we've had this happen
exactly it.
Yes, and we've had this happen probably a couple of dozen times where we'll be out in the middle of nowhere and there'll be a stream that's, a mile or 2 away, and suddenly it feels and sounds like it's 2 feet from us, rushing, and it's because of this space-time distortion of an anechoic chamber. And we have had this happen over and over and over again, and we know that it's definitely a phenomenon that's associated with the ETs that are very close.
Oh, that's boy, what a great way to understand that happening, because all of us felt it, and it was, and on the way home, 4 people were going back to New York City in their car, going along the Taconic Parkway. They saw a snow owl, which I don't even think we have in this region, sitting in a tree.
Wow.
So that night's theme was definitely the owl, but it's wonderful how, and sometimes breezes will come up. It feels like the ETs will use so many things that we understand to communicate with us, whether it is touch or using trees or nature, earth, and it's beautiful how much they try to communicate with us. And I always say, if you're not getting communications with the ET, it probably has more to do with you than them.
Oh, sure, because, they're waiting for people to be in a state of coherence and being awakened, and then it's very effortless. And Diane, what are some of the things that you've experienced and seen lately?
I was just reflecting on this amazing experience that the smaller working group we had either last night or the night before, and we have these chairs that we lay in that are very comfortable. And it seems like as soon as we go into the chairs and go into just opening our hearts and going into just a brief connecting, the ETs start appearing in these ships, in craft that we see going back and forth. But the other night, the whole sky was clear, just absolutely clear. There was not a cloud in the sky.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, this cloud formation came right over. There were 4 of us right over our chairs, and it stayed there. And it looked rather curious because the whole sky was clear. And we kept watching it, and we said, what is this? And then we looked up, and before we knew it, the clouds started disappearing, not moving with the wind. They started disappearing and forming, I kid you not, the letters X and then O. X-O. We all saw it, and then a second later, poof, there weren't any clouds left. It was completely gone.
Wow. So they were giving you a big cosmic kiss. That is amazing. Years ago, we had some people doing this in West Virginia, and it was very cloudy and this and that, and it was on a lot of brand new trainees, and people were going, well, everyone thinks, the ET craft is going to come in like a Steven Spielberg movie, and you're going to climb on board and have bagels and lox. But what happened was that people were going, well, they had the meditation, there were some subtle phenomena, and at the end, someone said, oh, I wish we could just see an ET. Suddenly, in the sky, a cloud, quote unquote, materialized that formed 2 letters, E-T.
Oh,
and everyone saw it. And it was like, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, and it's, and that's when they're there. They're there as far as they felt safe to be there for whatever reasons. And yet they will do something like that is mind-blowing, that you would be almost like in a science fiction film, except by a whole group of people. And that is just amazing. One other time, years ago, I took a group down to Mount Popo, the big volcano outside Mexico City, and we were on the far back side of it near Atlimayaya. And we had this massive, huge, 800-900 feet on each side triangular ship, and then a circular craft come out of the volcano and circle us and signal to us and then vanish. And then it was later that night, and we were really tired because we had flown from the United States, and then had only been there a couple of days. And Sherry Adamak was with me, and a few other people, another medical doctor, and we looked over, and to the sky, to the left of the volcano, were two brilliant stars that were right in line with each other, like two eyes. And in a crystal clear desert sky, a head, it looked just like an E.T. head, of clouds formed around those stars, so that the head was almost like two-thirds the size of the volcano, and there were these two bright stars that were the eyes, with this E.T. face just shining from the sky looking at us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love it.
And we went, oh, my God, you got to be kidding. And, these sort of things. So a lot of times, you're so right to point out to folks that there are these phenomena that happen in nature which are not natural phenomena, but they'll utilize natural phenomena, whether it's an animal or the clouds or something else, as a way of sending that they get it, that they know you're there making contact, and they'll make contact, that it'll be through these indirect means. Because every time we've had a craft like a Crestone that's fully materialized, that floats over, in comes a military jet or a helicopter. And, of course, at Mount Shasta, as you all know, a few years ago, we had one that came out of the mountain, and there was a weapon system fired at it that crashed into the woods right in front of us.
Right.
It was an electromagnetic energy weapon. And I've always told the ETs, that this planet is not exactly the Garden of Eden, the peace yet, and to do this in a way that is safe for everyone concerned, them and humans as well as the ETs. And so everyone has to be very aware of the fact that this is part of the dynamic, and they're willing to do a lot if you're conscious enough and intuitive enough to see how it's happening. And then every once in a while there'll be something, like you said, this golden ship that just floats right over your house and sits there. That's so unmistakable. But then there are all these subtle things that happen, which in a way, many times I find more endearing and amazing than the others.
Well, and I think it also, what it's teaching all of us in the group is to use our subtle vision, our subtle kinesthetic cues, it's teaching us the subtleties of consciousness. Exactly. And all of a sudden they start showing up through those channels. It's beautiful, because really we're learning how to do this.
Taking people into what I call unity consciousness, where you begin to realize that it's not that you're just awake, but the earth is awake. The air you're looking at, the space that you're looking at with your eyes, it's all consciousness resonating and phasing as space or time or a star or a bird or a tree, but all of it is pure consciousness. And so all this is that, and then people at the World Fusion Network understand this concept, but it actually begins to put it in play. And these interstellar civilizations get that. They completely understand it. And really the big leap, I tell people these free energy technologies, anti-gravity systems, those should have all been out 50 to 100 years ago. The big science of the next 1,000 years and on forward beyond that is the science of consciousness, of mind, of understanding all this interplay. And that's what's most exciting about all this. And it's the central concept to comprehend, apprehend, live, and begin to experience, to be an ambassador to the universe, as we call it, to be in contact with these civilizations. Because if they're traveling from one galaxy or star system to here, they are crossing through dimensions that are conscious and light and all these kinds of phenomena, and they get that in a fully operational way. And so they're trying to sort of nudge us into this new paradigm, a new reality, so that we can actually interface with them in a way that's meaningful.
Yes, and what's amazing, I find, is that the more you use your consciousness and open your heart, there's this, it's almost like a courtship. It goes back and forth, and the more that you extend your consciousness and heart out to the ETs, they'll start playing with you more. And just one quick little anecdote, we often sleep in a tent on our property, and the top is open to the stars. There's no tarp on it or anything. And one night after our last expedition, a bunch of us went to sleep in the tent and looked up at the sky. And I was just sort of, in my heart saying goodnight to the ETs. And I kid you not, but it was like, we call it a streaker, just twice. It looked like a ship just quickly passing exactly over this little window above our tent, as if they're just saying goodnight.
Oh,
and they went,
God.
and it happened twice, because I went, what? And it went on one side of the tent that was open, and then it came back a second later. And it was just amazing, because I really felt like I was connecting with them through my heart and saying goodnight, and then they connected right with me, and I was blown away by that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, that reminds me of the time at Mount Shasta where we were standing out in the National Forest. We were making our closing circle, and there were like 40 of us, I don't know. It was a big training, and we were making a circle, and I was doing sort of a closing prayer and meditation for the earth, and at that instant, two objects came out of the east, and they rose and they went together from horizon, from east to west, across the entire sky to say goodnight to us. And it was two fully materialized craft that in just a couple of seconds, everyone saw this, and it went right across the sky. And actually what was interesting in Crestone last month, we had an object just like that came out of the east, and it was right at a point in a meditation where we were doing this healing for Mother Earth and the healing of humanity to go forward as a peaceful people. And at that moment, this craft, a golden craft, you could actually see the form of it, came out of the east and went horizon to horizon to the west, right over the group, and you could hear it. People could actually hear it moving across it. It was one of the most astonishing sightings. And interesting, the filmmaker was there and saw it. That it was the first night he came out, and he went, "What in the world?" I said, "Yeah, well, this is what happens."
Right.
So it's fun to introduce people to these things. And by the way, people who want to support the film project, I just want to talk for a moment. The reason we're working on this is to bring out the whole concept of disclosure, contact, transdimensional science of consciousness, and free energy systems in a 2-hour feature documentary that we're working on. We're doing it totally from what's called crowdfunding, from the public supporting it. And you can go to serious.neverendinglight.com, and for various donation levels, you get a copy of the film, or a trip on a training, or tickets to the premiere, or what have you. And you can see what those are. We're also, and this is very sensitive, I'm going to speak very carefully, so listen carefully. A couple of years ago, Dr. Bravo, who's a fellow emergency physician who's on our board of directors for disclosureproject.org and ccity.org, and I went to a foreign country, that's all I can say, and I was the third person to ever handle this dead, deceased extraterrestrial being. Now, it is a physical specimen. We're told it's ET. That's not yet been proven. It's a possibility we can include this in this film. It's going to be, unfortunately, very costly to do the genetic testing, the MRI scans, the geneticist review, our anthropological reviews, and all of this. It has to be done to vet and check this out thoroughly. At this point, the institute that has this little being, which has been dead for an undetermined amount of time, is willing to cooperate. What people have to understand is that I have held it, I've examined it, I've looked at the x-rays of it. It is not a plaster of Paris hoax. It is not any birth defect that I know of, although we're having some geneticists review it. It most certainly is not a predecessor of Homo sapiens, in other words, a hominid like Lucy or one of these ancient ones, because it's a fairly fresh body. It's got some connective tissue still on it. It's mostly skeletal, but there is some fascia we call it, and connective tissue and neural tissue in the skull and the brain. I've examined it very thoroughly. There's no question that it's an actual biological specimen. If it is what we think it is, it would be dispositive and explosive. So if people want to help support our being able to check this out further, they can also help us at serious.neverendinglife.com, because what Dr. Bravo and I want to do is a full scientific examination, including various scientific scanning, MRIs, possibly radioisotopes, and carbon dating, although that's problematic because we don't want to damage the creature by taking large samples. We want to be able also to do a full genetic comparison to Homo sapiens as well as any other known existing hominids that may be in archaeological or anthropological databases. So this is a substantial undertaking. One person wrote to my blog and said, boy, do you really want to try to do that on top of everything else you're doing between now and December to get this film completed? But I said, this is like the pearl of great price. This one you don't throw away. You don't toss this one back into the ocean. So that is something we're trying to pursue. At this point, we cannot reach any firm conclusions, except I can say dispositively that it is not a hoax in terms of being a biological specimen. It is definitely a biological specimen. It is definitely a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and it doesn't look like anything human. So, and it's not just like a skull that may or may not be a deformed human skull like some of the things that you've seen on the internet. This is an entire body. So, we're trying to pursue this. Obviously, the security concerns and the scientific issues around this are mind-boggling. The only reason I'm mentioning it is, number one, we're going to need funding support to do the proper testing. Number two, the more that people know we're even in pursuing this, it creates a zone of protection around us, because paradoxically, the more the people who know what we're doing, the more protected we are. A lot of people couldn't understand when I was doing Disclosure Project 10 years ago why I started talking about the 115 or so top secret people that we had that we were interviewing. I said it's because you can't buy the kind of protection that millions of people knowing what you're doing can give you, because these classified and rather shadowy projects do not want to step into a billion-watt spotlight. So on the one hand, we have to do this rather discreetly and carefully at the request of the people who have this specimen. On the other hand, I'm loath to do it in secrecy because I think it's highly risky. So that's why we're talking about it today. So those of you who kind of read between the lines of what I'm telling you, this is something that we want to do in the next, probably in the next 60 days. So time is of the essence. Unfortunately, the genetic testing on this could take some time, and for this data to make its way into this historic film, which you can see a description of it, serious.neverendinglife.com, that's going to require, some type of real planning, and we may have to actually, unfortunately, to do a global search of a proper institute that can do this in a timely fashion, because it's a serious amount of scientific testing that has to be done. But at any rate, we are pursuing it. I have green-lighted that effort. I talk about it on my blog, which is Dr. Greer's blog.disclosureproject.org, and there's a link to it from our sites. So I just wanted to give people a heads up about this. This is kind of late-breaking news. And Dr. Bravo is heading up the coordination of this scientific team. Dr. Ted Loader would also be helping us, who's our science advisor, who's Professor Emeritus, University of New Hampshire. And there's some other scientists we're working with who wish to remain anonymous at this point. But if anybody listening can help us with this, then let us know. And if you can help with the support of creating this film, we have enough to do sort of the rudimentary of a feature film, but this is not a $5 million film budget. It's, it's a couple $100,000, but, thanks to everyone who contributed. But if we could get some more funding, we could do a better film and include more evidence and do more witness interviews and with military and other people who are coming forward. There's a new CIA witness who's come forward, many people have heard about, who's confirmed the Roswell event. So we're wanting to include as many things as possible. Each thing we want to add, of course, costs funds to go and film and travel, and there's just a lot of out-of-pocket expenses with doing a film like this. So any support that anyone can give us who's listening, we do appreciate it. And for those of you who have already supported what we're doing with this project, I want to thank all of you sincerely, because it's helped us to be able to greenlight the initial budget for the production company and the filmmaker to go forward, and we're off and running. So it's a very, very exciting time.
Wow. Well, and Stephen, I just want to echo that as we all are doing this work on the planet, and you were the incredibly courageous person who started so much of this, and your protocols are protocols all of us can do, and the more we all do it, the safer you become, and that's real important to me, because the truth is, the more we all do it and the more ETs make themselves visible and contact is felt around the world, the more disclosure will take place, and this film is just going to top it all off, and
exactly.
I'm so excited.
Well, and Diane and Marilyn, you can just confirm that you've actually seen photos of me with this little specimen.
Yes, we've seen photos, and they're absolutely amazing, and there's no question about it. In the photos, this looks like an absolute biological being of some kind, and it is not human.
Yeah, there's no mistaking the pictures. It is definitely not human, and it's very real, and we both attest to that completely.
And I can tell you, having examined it and held it, of course I did so carefully with gloves on and whatnot, and examined the x-rays. In fact, Marilyn and Diane have seen me with the x-rays and with the being itself. But,
yes.
This is definitely a biological. This is not like, is it the alien autopsy thing? Is it a model? Is it a hoax? Is it this? I mean, the question is, what is it? It has gone through some review processes at a university, ruling out any existing known hominids. Hominids, by the way, are the predecessors to Homo sapiens, of course, on the evolutionary tree. But, the question then becomes, could it be some bizarre defect of a known human congenital birth defect? Could it be? We have to do a thorough examination, and this, of course, I mean, if NASA had a sample like this, they'd probably spend $200 or $300 million on it. So we're going to try to do it with what we can get, but it just the out of pocket to do the MRIs, the other scientific testing, the genetic testing is going to be substantial. I'll just tell you, we're still in the process of putting together a budget for that. But anyone who can help with that, we appreciate it, because this is something that is
people need to understand this could be some of the most pinpointed confirming evidence that we have on the
Yes, I mean, short of going to an underground base at Fort Huachuca or so-called 51 or something, and dragging a body out of the chambers there that they've shot down and killed. Yes, and so this is not something that this is not an opportunity that comes along every minute. And I've been doing this for 22 years, and I can tell you I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
So. Well, I believe we're out of time. I'd like to thank Marilyn and Diane. You're just awesome people, and you're doing great work there in New York with all the folks and keeping the torch alive for contact. And I hope sometime to join you up there on your land. It sounds wonderful.
Well, you absolutely have to, and you're invited anytime. And thank you, Stephen, for your amazing, brilliant work on this planet.
Thank you. Okay, and thanks to everyone at the World Puja Network. I appreciate you hosting us every 2 weeks. This has been Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer, and until next time, keep looking up, and in universal peace, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.